2 in the morning. Caracas goes dark. By dawn, the president of Venezuela is gone. This wasn't a movie plot. This was Operation Absolute Resolve, the most audacious special forces extraction in modern history. While the world watched aircraft carriers circle the Caribbean, a shadow war was already won on the ground. Here's the declassified timeline of how Delta Force breached the heart of Caracas and extracted Nicolás Maduro before his own military even knew what hit them. The setup didn't start the night of the raid. It started months earlier with a slow, deliberate squeeze. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group parked itself off Venezuela's coast. The USS Baton Amphibious Ready Group joined soon after. The official story: countering narco-terrorism. The Venezuelan government had been designated a narco-terrorist state, and the U.S. Navy was enforcing a quarantine. But surface movements only tell half the story. Below the public radar, intelligence assets were tracking one man's every move. CIA operatives embedded in Maduro's inner circle fed real-time location data back to Langley. Meanwhile, satellite surveillance mapped his movements, his safe houses, his security rotations. They weren't just watching. They were waiting for a specific window when Maduro would be stationary, vulnerable, and far enough from backup that resistance could be neutralized before reinforcements arrived. That window opened on a Tuesday night, at exactly 2 a.m. Venezuelan Standard Time. The operation began. Not with helicopters, not with boots on the ground, with invisible aircraft 30,000 feet above Caracas. F-35 stealth fighters slipped through Venezuelan airspace undetected, their radar signatures no larger than a bird. Their mission wasn't to announce American presence. It was to quietly eliminate it from being detected at all. Venezuela had spent years building a formidable air defense network. Russian S-300 missile systems positioned at strategic points around the capital. Chinese radar installations feeding data to integrated command centers. Iranian Shahed drones patrolling the borders. On paper, this was a fortress. Any conventional aircraft approaching would light up their screens like a Christmas tree. The F-35s didn't light up anything. Using electronic warfare capabilities most countries don't even know exist. They fed false data into Venezuelan radar systems. Ghost contacts appeared hundreds of miles away. Actual threats became invisible. Within 12 minutes, the entire air defense network around Caracas was either blind or chasing phantoms. That's when the deception kicked into overdrive. Explosions ripped through Fort Tiuna, Venezuela's main military command center. Simultaneously, La Carlota Air Base erupted in flames. Secondary strikes hit communications towers across the city. To anyone watching, this looked like the opening salvo of a full-scale invasion. Venezuelan military commanders scrambled to respond to what they thought was a massive air assault. They were looking in completely the wrong direction. While F-35s hammered military installations on the east side of Caracas, something else was happening to the west. Low-flying helicopters, masked by the chaos and flying well below radar coverage, skimmed rooftops toward a specific compound inside the Fort Tiuna complex. Witnesses later reported seeing aircraft moving so low they could feel the rotor wash from their windows. These weren't attack helicopters joining the strikes. These were transport birds carrying Delta Force operators who'd been rehearsing this exact raid for weeks. Back at a classified facility in the United States, they'd built a perfect replica of Maduro's safe house. Every door, every window, every sight line. They'd run the assault so many times they could execute it in complete darkness without missing a step. and they were about to prove it. The helicopters didn't land in an open area. They couldn't risk the exposure. Instead, they hovered above the compound while operators fast-roped directly onto the roof. 12 seconds from helicopter to breach point. The element moving through the building had one objective: secure the primary target before his presidential guard could establish a defensive position. Speed wasn't just an advantage. It was the entire strategy. Flash grenades detonated in rapid succession. The disorienting bursts weren't meant to harm. They were meant to freeze everyone in place for exactly 3 seconds. That's all Delta needed. Maduro's security detail reached for weapons they never got to fire. Doors his guards tried to lock were already being cut through with portable breaching tools. The operators moved like water through the compound, flowing around obstacles before resistance could form. Room clearing happened in silence, broken only by muffled commands and the metallic click of flex cuffs. The CIA asset embedded in Maduro's inner circle had done more than provide location data. They'd mapped the entire security protocol, which guards rotated when, where cameras had blind spots, which rooms Maduro actually used versus which ones were decoys. When operators reached the primary bedroom, they knew exactly what they'd find. Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were physically secured within 40 seconds of the first breach. No negotiation, no standoff, just trained operators executing a plan they'd perfected in rehearsal. The couple was moved immediately to the extraction point on the roof, where helicopters had never stopped hovering. 90 seconds after touching down, they were airborne again. Venezuelan forces, finally mobilizing to defend the compound, found nothing but empty rooms and discarded breaching equipment. The helicopters didn't fly toward the coast. That's what Venezuelan commanders expected. So they scrambled fighters to intercept along that route. Instead, the extraction birds headed north, then sharply east, using terrain masking to stay below radar. They rendezvoused with aerial refueling tankers over international waters, extending their range far beyond what Venezuelan military planners thought possible. Within 2 hours of leaving Caracas, Maduro was aboard a U.S. amphibious assault ship floating in the Caribbean. The entire operation, from first explosion to final extraction, lasted under 90 minutes. But the preparation behind those 90 minutes spanned months. Naval forces positioned offshore weren't just for show. The Carrier Strike Group and Amphibious Ready Group created a floating command center coordinating everything from signals intelligence to combat air patrols. Those F-35s that punched through Venezuelan air defenses, they'd launched from both land bases and ships, creating overlapping coverage that made interception nearly impossible. Some rotated back to Puerto Rico for refueling. Others landed on amphibious assault ships equipped to handle the F-35B variant. This rotation kept fresh aircraft over Venezuelan airspace throughout the entire operation. Venezuela's own fighter fleet never got off the ground. Their Su-30s, theoretically capable aircraft, sat grounded because the pilots couldn't get clearance from command centers that were either destroyed or cut off from communication. The aging F-16S they'd purchased from the United States decades ago remained in hangars, their American-made systems potentially compromised by backdoors nobody talks about publicly. Even if Venezuelan aircraft had launched, they would have faced an environment completely sanitized by American electronic warfare. Their radar showed ghosts. Their communications were jammed. Their missile systems received targeting data that was 12 minutes old. You can't defend against an enemy you can't see. communicating on frequencies you can't access, using technology you don't fully understand. Operation Southern Spear didn't just extract one man. It demonstrated a capability that redefines what modern military power actually means. Stealth wasn't about invisible aircraft. It was about invisible operations happening while the entire world watched something else. The naval blockade everyone focused on was never the main effort. It was the misdirection that made the real mission possible. The geopolitical map of South America shifted overnight, but the real story isn't what happened in Caracas. It's what this operation revealed about the gap between perceived military strength and actual capability. Venezuela invested heavily in Russian missile systems, Chinese radar networks, Iranian drones. On paper, they built a fortress. In practice, it became a liability the moment those systems were fed information they couldn't verify. Months of intelligence work, weeks of rehearsal, 90 minutes of execution. That's the formula that turned a heavily defended capital city into a penetrable target. The helicopters that extracted Maduro weren't special because of their technology. They were special because every defense designed to stop them was already looking somewhere else. Delta Force operators returned to their base before most of Venezuela even knew their president was missing. The aircraft carriers that dominated news coverage never fired a shot. They didn't need to. Their presence created the assumption of where the threat would come from, and that assumption was exactly wrong. This is what modern warfare looks like when one side controls not just the battlefield, but the information everyone uses to understand what's even happening. Venezuela's military didn't fail because they lacked equipment. They failed because they never saw the actual fight coming.